Welcome, fellow storm riders. You are officially a rider on the hypnotic storm. This is Chris Thompson, and welcome to session number 44 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. He loves cold weather, he loves raw oysters, and thinks Boswell's Life of Johnson is the best biography ever written.
Yes, Chris, I do. Johnson was one of my absolute favorites. I paid homage to him by going to his house in London, went and drank at the pub where he used to drink, and Samuel Johnson was the greatest conversationalist in history and one of Britain's most brilliant heroes. So, yes, I love that biography. If you haven't read it, you need to. So what are we going to do today? What are we looking at?
Well, I mean, where do you want to start here? It's the holiday season.
Let me tell you, it's the holiday season. We're not going to sing. Let me tell you exactly where we're going to start. I have not mentioned this to you, other than to say that there was something I read. I read an article the other day that my wife brought to my attention online.
Oh, the famous article you told me you were going to bring up on the podcast, which I don't know what it's about. Okay, go.
Anyway, this article was quite in-depth, and somebody had asked the blogger or whoever it was what she thought of people who gave advice without being asked for it, unsolicited advice. And you know, a lot of people don't like it. They don't want to be given advice because a lot of people hear it as a challenge to their own sanity or a challenge to their own intelligence. You think you're better than me? You're giving me advice. Well, we've run through that ad nauseum lately, but I mean, people I'm involved with, not in the podcast. So anyway, this article talked about this in some length. And the conclusion was why you should never give unsolicited advice. And it went on and on and on and just basically said, never, ever give unasked for advice to anyone for any reason. And I turned to my wife. I said, look, you've gone off the scale with that sound. Yeah. I said to my wife, so you have this person giving us advice
about not giving advice.
And how we should never give advice. Again,
it's a generalization.
Self-stultifies, falls apart. It's as crazy as the postmodernists who say, you know, you can't tell what any book means. They write entire books on it, and they expect you to understand what their books mean. And we've run into it again with this. Do not give advice ever under any circumstances. And I said, oh, is that your advice to us?
Did it seriously, like, take it to that extreme of don't ever do it under any circumstances, including this article that I'm writing?
No, it didn't say that. Yeah. But yeah, it absolutely was.
Okay, so you were looking for my reaction, but I clued
you went,
into
whoa, so you got it.
I totally got it.
But here's the other one, Chris. Another linguistic thing that we have discussed ad nauseum in this awesome podcast. I ran into a good friend of ours, Paul, the other night. There was a candlelight service at our little Presbyterian church, and we all sang Christmas carols. It was awesome. And the brilliant American pianist George Bowerman was there playing, and listened to some Handel and some Liszt and just wonderful things. Anyway, so Paul and I started talking afterwards. And I said to him, I'd explained to him this thing we just gone through with some family members who will not be named. And basically how annoying they had been, and it was absolutely impossible to deal with them based on the situation at hand. So I explained all this and said, oh, they've driven us nuts. I'm ready to cut them out of my life or neck crank them, whatever it is.
Whatever it takes. And Paul turns to me completely seriously, Chris, and he says, it is what it is.
Oh, I thought he was trying to push my buttons until I realized he doesn't listen to the podcast.
No.
And I said, what? He said, it is what it is. I said, Paul, that's a tautology. You have said nothing. Everything is what it is. Everything isn't what it isn't. You've given me no content. I said, what are you doing saying that? Here's his response. Well, basically, it means you just got to accept everything. I said, so we now have this trite tautology that if you Google it, you'll find out it came into the world through the business community, and it teaches people to be passive idiots who roll over and die. And I just do not go along with this at all. If someone says to me, it is what it is, I'm ready to strangle them. It is what it is until I change it.
I don't know why this reminds me of the time we were at the pub after jiu-jitsu class, and Adam got his bill before he even got his food. And he said, just stop complaining, Adam. Just pay the bill. Just pay the bill.
He's got a bill, and his food hasn't even arrived yet. The service was so slow because waitresses were sick. I said, just pay it. Don't cause any fuss. That's the same thing. It's the mindset. Be a passive,
just be a
moron. Fool. Roll over. Do what you're told. No, guys, you won't get that from us. We say fight back. Don't let people dominate you and control you and give you garbage.
So let's make sure people who are listening to this and haven't heard prior podcasts where we've talked about tautological phrases, so they understand what it means.
So the tautology is it gives you no information.
circular reference.
No, not
in a
even.
way.
There is no information. It's like saying all lawyers are lawyers.
Right, yeah.
There's no information in it at all.
That's
So when
what
you
I mean
say
by
it
circular
is what it
reference.
is, basically the person is saying, roll over and die because there's nothing you can do about it. Well, it stops people resisting oppression and all sorts of things. And I'm opposed to this with every part of my being.
It's almost like the ultimate yes set for idiots, right? Oh, it is what it is.
I love that.
Yeah, I just came up with that
The
right
ultimate
now.
yes
set
set
for
it is.
idiots.
Available on this podcast
Like,
only.
yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. I mean, you can't say no to that because, of course, it's true. It's self-referencing.
Anyway, it drives me insane, and I've heard it yet again. So, if one more person mentions it, it's going to drive me nuts. Here's the other one I keep hearing, Chris. People talk about the 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, I read the 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, I read all 4 volumes. However many this woman
So
has
it's
written.
like 200 shades of gray then?
Yeah, we're somewhere like billions of shades of gray. And I said, that's crap. It's not literature. Why would you waste your finite time on it? And the response from a guy was, well, have you read it? Meaning, if you haven't read it, you can't have an opinion. I said, no, but I've read entire sections of it online, and it sounds like it was written by a 14-year-old girl. I mean, it's just absolutely pathetic. So anyway, it isn't what it isn't. It is what it is. 50 Shades of Grey. I'm done with the whole matter. Go on, let's get some hypnosis content.
Okay, let's talk about context-free humor. I almost said content-free humor.
Yeah, sometimes it can be the same thing.
Wouldn't be very funny. Context-free humor. This has been a main staple. Is that even
It's been it's been staple for me. It's been a hallmark of my existence is to throw out humor without a context and watch the person basically deal with a PGO spike and try to deal with it. I've done this my whole life.
And the transderivational search.
Definitely trying to find meaning. I find it hilarious.
Okay, so let's bring up the context of this particular reference. So this morning,
Are you talking about the Branson Protocol?
No, not the Branson Protocol. We'll get to that,
All right.
won't we? Because it's important that you perform the Branson Protocol exactly
as written. Yeah.
So we were getting some water to record videos this morning. Oh, you asked me, so can I get grab a glass of water before we start recording videos? And I said, I've got some Berkey water, Berkey, Berkey, which is a type of filter. I've got the Berkey water here ready for you. And you said to me, did you just say turkey water?
And you said no.
No, I said Berkey water, and it fired a memory
for me,
you.
Which was as a kid hanging out with my best friend in grade 6, Brian McDowell, who I've known for 50 years now, just an excellent guy. Well, his kid brother, not Glug, Kenny, the other one, Kenny hated turkey.
Okay.
He convinced himself he hated turkey, but he loved chicken. So the only way they could get him to eat turkey was to tell him it was a big chicken. And playing on his anchored state with turkey as being bad, he was drinking a glass of water one day in their kitchen. I said, you know what kind of water that is? And he said, no. I said, it's turkey water. He said, no, it is. I said, that is turkey water. He wouldn't drink it anymore. And I just found the phrase turkey water so hilarious. Eventually it became rooster water. And I said to my niece, do you know what rooster water is? When she was a little girl. And she said, water that a rooster put his stinky yellow feet in. And I said, that's right. So I don't know, if you sling together things that have no connection and throw them at someone and let them try to deal with it, it's quite funny, which brought us to the Branson Protocol.
Right, and it all has to do with delivering a message, whatever the message is, with total congruence and expecting that is it a false expectation? I don't know. They're not going to understand it.
Right, it's an implied expectation that they'll know what you mean and that they'll follow through with what you're asking.
Right, you're almost faking the expectation, but so congruently, you're going to expect that they will get that there's supposed to be meaning to what you're about to say.
They're supposed to be doing something as a result. And what Chris is referring to is in the most recent Architecture of Hypnosis course. We had been doing 4 days of training, and they were used to working with me. We had a really good group. I mean, we've had a lot of great groups, but the last one was excellent solid. Group. And they learned so fast, and a lot of them are online storm riders now. But what was funny about it was I said to the group, we'd done a number of exercises, and I said, okay, now I want you to run the Branson Protocol, break into groups of 2. No, actually make it 3. One of you can watch the protocol being run. Make sure the person who's the most highly trained in the group and is most familiar with it runs it. And the rest of you just debrief, run it one way around only, and we'll find out right away in about 10 minutes' time what kind of results you got. And they're looking at me with blank expressions. I said,
any questions?
Any questions? Go. And
all of a sudden hands start going up at that point.
What are we supposed to do? Well, there is no Branson Protocol. I mean, it was just a stupid thing to say, but said congruently enough, they all thought at the same time they'd missed something.
Yeah.
They hadn't been paying attention.
Remember amnesia?
Remember amnesia? Press of the blots. That's right.
That was funny. So and that comes back to the press of the blots, which I think we've talked about.
We
on
have,
this podcast
probably
at
ad
some point.
nauseum, yeah.
So if you haven't heard what press at the blots is all about in that,
just say it's fundamental to the Branson Protocol.
Absolutely. That's for you, Justin.
But that was a good training. And one of the things that happened hypnotically was one young woman in the class wanted to experience synesthesia.
Right.
Because I had explained to her that I see music. I've seen music my entire life.
And you thought that was normal.
I thought it was normal as a kid. And when I discussed this with the overlapping of senses with Stefan Macchio, the brilliant Canadian pianist who wrote the Olympic theme in the last Olympics in Vancouver, the winter ones, also wrote Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, friend of mine, great guy. And I interviewed him a few years back and asked him if he saw music. And he went, oh, God, yes. And we got into a tremendous discussion of the synesthesia of the overlapping sentences where one can... overlapping senses where the sentence he gave me was about synesthesia and the overlapping senses of how, if we took a census of the entire thing, we would discover that the senses were overlapping and one can see music. So anyway...
and then you could talk about it in sentences.
Talk about it in sentences with your senses. Well, one woman in the class wanted to experience this. So I transferred out with what's known as a braid induction.
Yes, you did.
And we have it on video
Yes.
of her face when she sees music for the first time is absolutely priceless.
It was. So, okay, now let's talk about it a little bit in detail for those who aren't familiar, because this was a new term to me. So synesthesia, did I even say it?
There's an H in it. Synesthesia. Yeah.
This is the idea of
overlap of senses.
So in this particular instance, the idea was, can we have someone not only hear music, auditory,
but see it as well?
See it as if it's some kind of three-dimensional pattern, whatever it is.
Right.
Like a light show. Like you could hear a storm. You can hear it and you can see the lightning.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll accept that.
Making that up. There you go.
It's a bit of a nebulous connection, but I will accept it.
And so you had this conversation with her about it, and she said, wow, I'd really like to be able to do that. And so you used her as a demo subject and installed this capability within her. And it was actually the coolest demo I've ever seen because, well, it was...
It's the congruence of her response.
Yeah.
So first of all, she's in a somnambulistic trance. Her face is absolutely expressionless. Mm-hmm. And I get her to open her eyes and look around at the group and drop back into trance. And you can see she is absolutely gone. And then I put the two senses, the visual on one hand and the auditory sense on the other hand, and let her hands move together only as quickly as her unconscious mind developed neural pathways between the two senses to enable her to be able to just a redundancy off the scale, but to enable her to see music. And it was astounding, the result. But the best part, Chris, is she still got the ability.
Oh yeah, and the response from on her face, the look on her face when her hands touched. And then you used your iPhone at the time to play a song
iPhone 5
through your Bluetooth Geneva speaker thing.
Yes, I did.
And holy crap, can I say that on this
Sure,
kid-friendly
you just
show?
did. We'll edit it out.
But the response, when she first heard the music and started obviously seeing it at the same time.
Instantly
every single person in the class came up to me after and said, are we going to get a copy of that video? Because I want to see the expression on her face.
Oh, it's just unbelievable. It was angelic. Like, she had this look of childlike wonder of a kid that sees, a snowfall for the first time or Disney World for the first time. It was absolutely magical. I'm so glad we caught it on video. And the music I used was actually Philip Glass, solo piano, and he was playing the theme from the movie The Hours. And it's very simple piano music. But then I quickly dovetailed it into two other themes. I could have put on Slipknot or something, but I don't know how she would have seen that.
It was incredible. Anyway, I'm not sure why we even brought that up.
Well, it's the power of hypnosis, right? You talked about that particular training.
I brought it up.
In the Branson Protocol. And I said another interesting thing that happened on that training was this.
Exactly. And in my mind, this is a demonstration of all kinds of things that you can do to create generative change in people.
Absolutely.
Right? So we were actually talking about this just over lunch today. The two types of change you can help people make are either remedial change,
where you're fixing something that's wrong,
or generative change,
where you're creating something new.
And in this case, It was generative shakes.
Purely
It's
generative.
A lot more fun in many cases to help people get better at stuff they're already good at.
Yes, absolutely it is. That's what I like working with, because you can do it on Skype really well. If you're helping people develop new abilities, I do that on Skype all the time, because then I can work with things like mindscaping and so on, and I'm not trying to fix a deep trauma or whatever that they might then abreact or have a bad effect.
Right, and if you ever do run into a problem with this, all you need to do is run the Branson protocol completely.
Completely press the blocks, and everybody's quite happy.
Absolutely. So Branson protocol, go
What's
ahead and
next
do it.
on the agenda here?
Let's talk about dealing with learning languages. We had a question from Stephen that came in by email, and he wanted to know if you can use hypnosis to learn new languages faster.
Oh, of course you can. Well, first of all, the entire sleep learning idea has been largely discredited, insofar as you can put earphones on and listen to language all night, but you won't be able to speak it any better or learn it any better for that matter.
Not like that Simpsons episode.
I didn't see it, Chris, so we'll let that one go. But I will be asking you as soon as this is over.
Right.
The interesting thing about it, though, is hypnosis will facilitate rapid language acquisition. And the circuitry is there for all of us. Noam Chomsky spoke of the language matrix that we all have. There's no reason without a preformed DNA-encoded matrix that we could learn language rapidly, as we do. Babies, children, they pick it up so fast. It's crazy. And I was very blessed, Chris, because I studied with Barry Farber years ago. And Barry Farber at that time spoke 15 languages. And he's been, 26 languages. That was it. And he has been acquiring a language a year ever since. And people in the class, he'd say, who speaks a language? And someone would start talking, and they'd start talking back and forth and joking and laughing. And he'd say, oh, we're speaking Turkish, something else. And someone else would talk, so we're speaking Mandarin, Japanese, French, Chinese, Austrian, well, not Austrian, but German, and all these different languages. It was astounding. But all language acquisition is state specific. So if you are in an empowering, resourceful state, it will make your language learning faster and faster. Barry Farber doesn't teach any languages, but he teaches how to acquire languages quickly. And you basically come at it from numerous angles. Use flashcards, listen to the target language on the radio, read newspapers in it, look at websites, everything. Just saturation, which works really well. In fact, saturation will get you a lot of skills. A number of years ago, I saturated my brain with blues scales, listening to blues guitar over and over and over, had it playing all the time. So I was unconsciously taking in the blues scale over and over and over. Meanwhile, I built in the physicality of learning how to play the scale using all my fingers very quickly on my Stratocaster at the time. And then through the saturation and the physicality, was able to suddenly start playing blues really well. And it got to the point that I could play along with a blues song, and Heather would be upstairs, and she would not be able to tell which was me and which was Eric Clapton.
Oh,
because
that's awesome.
The saturation and the physicality, the two together, gave the result. With language, it's not the same physicality unless you're trying to get your voice around peculiar syllables like the in Hanukkah or whatever. But the saturation is really key. Overwhelming saturation helps you learn it much quicker. And you can do even better if you deliberately put yourself in a high-performance state first.
Okay, so that was going to be where I took the questioning next. So if you want to use hypnosis to learn a language or multiple languages, what's the protocol? Get yourself into
a high-performance
state, which doesn't even need to use formal hypnosis. You can just do Grinder's model of start with breathing and moving and all of that.
Yep, change the breathing, change the physiology, move around, breathe deeply, shift your body, relax, get into a powerful state. Then the language acquisition is quicker. But if you want to use straight hypnosis, you can do it through direct suggestion, either self-hypnosis or have someone else put you in a trance and have them give you the suggestions that you're going to learn French or whatever it is quicker. You'll remember the material. And meanwhile, they're attacking the suggestion from every conceivable angle, not just saying you're learning French, you're learning French, you're learning French, or the older methods.
Hey, I have total side note. This isn't even in my notes for this podcast, but speaking of learning languages.
And we are.
I was thinking about this. So I speak a little bit of French. I'll say I'm conversationally French. I can speak conversational. I can
un petit peu seulement.
Oui, sûrement un petit peu. And I can get by, find. I can probably order a drink at a bar, find directions to the bathroom.
You can certainly order a drink at a bar.
I can tell a cabbie where to go, et cetera, et cetera.
Tell a cabbie where to go.
But I do not have the fluency. But I was thinking about it. If somebody was learning hypnosis and they were learning how to generate those Ericksonian language patterns, And in hypnosis, we tend to talk slowly.
That's
and
right.
go slow and speak at a comfortable pace. And the beautiful thing is, it gives you lots of time to think about what you're going to say next. That's right. And so, if I wanted to practice speaking French,
I mean, really practice.
Wouldn't it be useful to switch en français et parle lentement and just speak
Très lentement.
Oui, and have lots of time to think about what I was going to say and just speak Ericksonian hypnosis in the French language, for
Bitte
example.
wiederholen Sie das und sprechen Sie langsam.
But do you think that would have any benefit to learning how to speak French?
Yeah,
for
why
example?
not? I mean, absolutely. Cross the circuitry, from one thing into something else. Mapping across is one of the greatest skills of all. Recognizing that the skill one has for something like stamp collecting can also be mapped across into something entirely different. It's a bizarre thing of the human brain.
So something I'll have to try because one of my
Don't try it, Chris. Don't you dare
I mean
try it.
experiment with.
Make it happen.
When I say try there, for everybody listening, I mean experiment with.
We'll edit that out.
It would, because I don't think at this point in time my skill in French is good enough to generate all the linkages.
Not
and all
at
that.
this juncture.
But it would be cool to learn enough about French to do that. Then my French, I believe, would get very, very good.
That's good.
So anyway, something I'm going to fool around with and experiment
Let's see what
with.
kind of results you get. Report back to us.
All right, let's talk about the next thing, which is we had a question come in about using hypnosis to deal with cancer. And I think this is probably useful from both the self-hypnosis angle and the traditional hypnosis angle. So if somebody is dealing with cancer, obviously the main thing to deal with here is their immune system and their state of mind.
Well, there's a lot of things, Chris.
Right?
There's the immune system, because the immune system is necessary to fight the cancer. So one of the old methods is seeing sharks, or whatever. I've dealt with a number of cancer patients, seeing sharks attacking and devouring the tumor.
Okay, like a guided
classic
imagery.
Right. But the difference is, if you do it within the constraints of a formal trance, it's going to be more powerful. I met a teacher at a school years ago, and he was overcoming his cancer and getting good results. He imagined Doberman pinchers attacking the cancer and ripping it apart. Because the Doberman doesn't lock its jaws, it rips and tears. And that's what he was visualizing. That can be useful. And again, when done within a hypnotic trance, it's more powerful. But it's also useful not just in the support of the immune system. Remember I told you the study that was done in England where they had a number of little preschool kids watching a Punch and Judy puppet show?
Yes.
And the Punch and Judy hand puppets were attacked by these nasty things that tried to kill them. And then these amorphous white blobs and these crystalline things came and attacked the nasty things and drove them out and wiped them out and swallowed them and so on. And then within 10 minutes, the kids with saliva swabs administered by doctors indicated increased macrophage and antibody production. So the metaphor of a Punch and Judy puppet show is increasing their immune response, which is amazing. So obviously, if someone is dealing with cancer, which is not really, in my view, at least a specific disease, the cancer is not the tumor, in my opinion. The cancer is a catastrophic failure of the immune system, because your body's killing cancer cells every day. It's just sometimes it stops doing it or it doesn't do a very, very thorough job. But it's not just the dealing with the immune system. Another one of the keys here is someone who is dealing with the side effects of chemotherapy, let's say, or radiation, will benefit greatly from hypnosis, because it helps stave off some of the exhaustion and even the nausea that's concomitant with that. Yes, of course.
You can think of it as generative change in this case.
Generative change, yeah.
You're
generating more health.
Right, generative change in terms of recovering faster. Treat almost the same as you're treating an athlete, who's working out regularly. So, recover from
increase the recovery speed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so many ways you can approach this, and even just the mindset, keeping someone in a positive mindset so they don't get depressed or whatever, which is often a very necessary thing in cases like this. So yes, cancer patients can be helped by hypnosis, as can patients in almost every other illness.
Right. And of course, there's also the aspect of pain control, because if somebody is dealing with
turning pain down,
Okay.
Whether it's post-operative or actual pain from tumors or whatever,
Okay, so I hope that helps answer the question for Joanne, who had sent that one in. Let's move on to Neil in Australia. I love
I remember this.
Neil is in our online academy, and I love what he wrote because he said, I think my employees are getting sick of me talking about hypnosis, but I don't care because I'm the boss. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that's fantastic. Anyway, Neil had asked in an email, what's going on with why has the medical community seemingly not taken to hypnosis? You've got Erickson, you've got Ellman, you've got all these wonderful guys who have done amazing work with hypnosis. Why does the medical community
did not make greater use of it?
Let
me answer that for you, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, hypnosis was almost pushed out by the Freudians and psychoanalysis around the beginning of the 20th century. But World War I intervened, and they had all these suddenly traumatized American, Canadian, French, German, Austrian, East Indian, Australian soldiers who were traumatized, had post-traumatic stress disorder, couldn't possibly be put through 300 hours of psychoanalysis. So they took hypnosis off the shelf, de-traumatized them quickly, put it back on the shelf again, and then World War II intervened, and they had a lot of traumatized soldiers, did it again, took hypnosis off the shelf. Then it was recognized as a legitimate medical modality by the American Medical Association, and then the Canadian one followed shortly after, because as I love to say, when the U.S. sneezes, Canada catches pneumonia, we get whatever's coming around. And it was recognized as a medical modality, but around the same time, and a few decades before, there was a problem. There was something occurring within North American medicine, which was the traditional medical schools were wiping out the homeopathic hospitals that were quite extensive in the early days, and they took to heart the whole maximum, first of all, do no harm. Homeopathic medicines don't produce negative effects. Now remember, drugs don't produce side effects. They only produce effects.
And the
if
ones
we don't
that
like
we don't
them,
want, we call
them side effects. So meanwhile, the medical schools, in my opinion, were being supported by huge donations from the drug companies. And with the onset of penicillin, with the discovery of penicillin from a mold, it was believed at that time that every problem now had a medicine for it. It was, here we have a medicine that will cure gonorrhea and syphilis and all the strep throat and all of these things really quickly. And they threw penicillin at all kinds of things and began looking for a medicine as a solution for each and every problem. And consequently, some of the deeper effects that could be brought about by hypnosis and other therapies at the time were laid aside. So it led to what we have in modern day, and it's purely my opinion, but I think it's unfortunate. Everything now requires medication. You throw a medicine at everything. And I think we've lost touch with a lot of the deeper therapies that actually address causes instead of treating symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, here, let's just examine this a little bit more. So no disrespect to traditional Western medicine doctors listening, etc., obviously. But if you are in medical school, how much time do you think you spend learning about things like nutrition?
Yeah.
How about mental state management? Because, well, if you're depressed, there's antidepressants for that, right? Well, what about actually exercising and eating healthier and
teaching people how to personal choice and manage their states better? Yeah.
Breathing and moving and all of these things, right? Well, you will practically never find a doctor who will, unless they're trained outside of the traditional medical environment,
allopathic
teach
medicine.
You, all you need to do is breathe more.
Yeah, or you might find that practicing yoga is helpful for your, your anxiety instead of being given a drug. And it's unfortunate because it turns people into the receptacles of pharmaceuticals and increasingly complex pharmaceutical blends, because people are taking drugs now to deal with the side effects of other drugs and so on.
Well, I mean, side effects. And I think the business around pharmacology is so.
You think there's money in that?
Responsive to this whole environment that, if I'm not feeling well, what pill can I take? That's why they have this whole drug discovery protocol going on. They'll just mix stuff together and do tests with it and find out what it does.
Yeah.
Oh, this seems to work really well on this particular thing.
Really,
so we'll start selling this pill now.
It's really unfortunate. I have to Google this and find the actual name of it, but this is going to sound like a joke, and it isn't. This is how crazy some of this stuff gets.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, the Civil War cured a disease. The Civil War actually cured a psychiatric disorder, if you look at this historically. I've got to find the name of the disorder, and it's not at my fingertips, and I apologize for that. But the disorder was the desire of black slaves to be free. It was labeled a psychiatric disorder that they would want to be free from the white slave owner. I mean, it's insane. And the war ended, and all of a sudden, that was removed from the DSM because it was no longer a disorder. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, the stuff that people believe. You are your own best judge of what you should be doing for your health. And I think there's a place for modern medicine. There's a place for pharmaceuticals, but I think there's also a place for a lot of the other therapies like hypnosis and EFT and a lot of other cool things.
So in a sense, Mike, are you telling us that you can either take control of your own situation and you can find the appropriate method of solving your problem, or you can just say, well, it is what it is?
Oh, thank you. Okay, and that brings us to today's empowering question. It is this. The empowering question for today, and as usual, I'm going to say it twice. What part or aspects of your life have you given control of to other people? What part or aspects of your life have you given control of to other people? And what are you going to do about it now?
Awesome question. Now, do you have a closing metaphor?
I do, Chris. The closing metaphor is the story of my uncle, Ken Mayo. Ken Mayo wasn't a real uncle. He was like my uncle, Tom McKernan. He was a courtesy uncle. A courtesy uncle was a close family friend who we called uncle. And I am that to a number of people's kids. I'm Uncle Mike. Well, Ken Mayo was an interesting man. He was a lieutenant in the British Army. But he was a lieutenant in a Gurkha patrol in the Second World War. Now, the Gurkhas are Britain's favorite mercenaries. In fact, all sorts of nations have hired mercenary soldiers over the years, including probably one of the most noteworthy, which is the French Foreign Legion. They're called the Foreign Legion because they're all foreigners. They're not French, they're Canadian, American, South African, Australian, Dutch, etc. Well, Britain has hired the Gurkhas for a couple of hundred years. The Gurkhas are from Nepal. And I have a vested interest in this because I had a couple of foster kids in Nepal for a while that we were supporting until they got old enough to manage with their family, and not far from Kathmandu. Anyway, Nepal produced the Gurkhas, who are, I think their average height is about 5'4", 5'5". They're mountain people. They have enormous lung capacity, and they're absolutely fearless. And their motto is, never complain, never explain. And Britain has hired them for generations as their foremost mercenaries because they can do seeming miracles. Well, Gurkhas are known to carry a very specific knife known as a kukri. A kukri has a nasty curved blade, goes to a sharp point, and it's curved towards, the point points towards your adversary, rather than a curve pointing back towards yourself. The kukri is never drawn from its scabbard without drawing blood. So if you ask to see a Gurkha's kukri that he keeps razor sharp, he removes it from the scabbard, cuts his finger, and then hands it to you. They always draw blood. And so my Uncle Ken was running a Gurkha patrol in the Second World War. And the Gurkhas are noteworthy insofar as they are allowed to choose their own officer from the British Army. They can decide who they want and who they don't want. There must be the respect. And the officer has to speak Gurkhali, which is their language, and Ken did. Well, one night they were on a patrol, and he awoke about 3 a.m. They'd set sentries around their camp. There's maybe a dozen of them, small platoon, and he awoke in the night to discover in the jungle he was alone. Every single one of them had left in the night without warning, in the dark. And he sat up, waiting, listening for every sound in case they'd been ambushed or what had occurred. Hours later, at the first hint of dawn, the patrol came marching into camp. And they had around their necks on strings human ears, because when they killed an enemy, they cut his ears off and wore it around their neck. They were so fearsome and so terrifying that when they arrived in Argentina, or against the Argentinian soldiers in the Falklands War of 1981, just the news that the Gurkhas had arrived caused an immediate surrender. Fearsome, fearless soldiers. And Ken asked them, "Where did you go?" Well, they'd heard from a tribesman that someone thought his cousin said he'd seen two enemy soldiers in another village 12 miles away a few days ago. And they'd gone on foot in the night and found this guy. And I still keep in my sunroom, in a case, a Gurkha kukri, just in case.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel, podcast session number 44. I'm Chris Thompson. Hope you enjoyed the show. Head on over to iTunes and leave a rating, leave a review. We'd love to get your, hopefully, 5-star review.
And we want you to know that in May of 2014, we will be running the next Architecture of Hypnosis course in Toronto. We are only running 2 a year, one in May and one in November. We just don't have time with everything else. If you want to come and study with me for 5 days at the University of Toronto and change your life, whether you're a brand new hypnotist or a trainer from some other system, I'll get you to the next level. Chris and I will get you there. So check online, find out, because it is going to fill up.
Yeah, hopefully that'll please all of the people, many of you who have emailed asking when the next 5-day course is. Yep. So it's going to be in May 2014. We'll nail down the dates. So that said, what you need to do now is head on over to our website, Mike Mandel, hypnosis.com. You're going to find an opt-in email list that you can join. You can get Mike's free ebook, Brain Software, life-changing stuff that he charges thousands of dollars to teach to corporations live, and all kinds of videos, Q&A about hypnosis, and of course...
We are here for you.
Yeah, of course, we're here for you. We will send you emails updating you on podcasts and all kinds of other cool
trainings, all kinds
stuff.
of things you can come and learn.
We don't spam you. So head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com and join our list. Make sure you are a part of the Storm Rider community.
Taught you on 45. That's right.
This podcast has been paid for entirely by contributions from the North American Winter Alliance of Chefs and Food Critics, wrongfully accused and convicted of the act of public mastication.